My name is Sophia and I, 90 years old. I sat with this truth for a long time before I spoke it aloud. I wasted entire seasons of my life on illusions that felt reasonable at the time, and I watched so many others do the same. What I discovered wasn't about regret. It was about recognition. The moment you see the pattern, the spell breaks, and you get some of your time back, not all of it, but enough to matter. Here were 7 ways I wasted time after 50, 7 quiet thieves, and the 7th one disguised itself as wisdom until it had stolen a decade. What could I have focused on instead? That question became my compass. 1, clinging to objects as if they were memories. I kept my mother's wedding china wrapped in tissue paper for 43 years, never served a meal on it, never even unwrapped it after moving. Just lugged those 12 place settings from house to house like a sacred debt, the silverware tarnished in its case, the linen napkins yellowed. I told myself I was honoring her, but I was just avoiding the decision, keep or release. Each object demanded care, dusting shelves I never used, worrying who would want this someday. The weight wasn't physical, it was the weight of imagined obligation. What could I have focused on instead? The space between things, the freedom of an uncluttered room where light could actually move. I could have focused on experiences that left no dust, asking my granddaughter to teach me her favorite recipe instead of polishing serving platters no one would ever use. Things don't hold your past, you do, and you carry it lighter when your hands are empty. 2, waiting for perfect conditions to begin. I bought a leather-bound journal at 62, kept it on my nightstand for 11 years. Waited for the morning my mind would feel clear enough, my hands steady enough, my thoughts profound enough to deserve those creamy pages. I never wrote a single word. The journal stayed pristine, while my actual thoughts, the messy, fleeting, human ones, evaporated unrecorded. I confused preparation with living. What could I have focused on instead? The dignity of starting small. 1 sentence scribbled on a grocery receipt, a single paragraph typed with 2 fingers. Imperfect action beats perfect intention every time. The second half of life isn't about arriving ready. It's about beginning anyway. That blank journal taught me nothing. But the cheap notebook I finally used at 74, filled with shaky handwriting and coffee stains, taught me how to listen to myself again. 3, filling silence with noise. I kept the television on from morning until bedtime, news during breakfast, game shows while folding laundry, true crime podcasts while washing dishes. I mistook constant sound for companionship. But one Tuesday, the power went out for 3 hours. No television, no refrigerator hum, just silence. And in that silence, I heard my own breath. I noticed the way afternoon light climbed the wall. I felt the ache in my left knee I'd been ignoring for months. The noise hadn't been keeping me company. It had been keeping me numb. What could I have focused on instead? 15 minutes of intentional quiet each morning, no screen, no radio, just sitting with my tea and the weight of my own presence. Noise drowns out life. Silence reveals what needs attention. 4, living through memories instead of through the present. I spent evenings replaying my daughter's wedding day, her lace sleeves, the string quartet, my husband's tears. I'd relive it for hours while she sat across from me at Sunday dinner describing her new garden. I nodded along but didn't hear her say she'd planted lavender because it reminded her of my perfume. I was living in a memory while missing a moment that would itself become memory. Nostalgia became a cage. What could I have focused on instead? The texture of now, the warmth of this cup in my hands, the specific pitch of my granddaughter's laugh when she tells a joke. The past is a story you tell yourself. The present is the only place where life actually occurs. I could have asked my daughter one question about her garden, instead of spending 20 minutes inside my head with a wedding that happened 18 years ago. 5. Believing I was too old to begin again. At 68, I saw a flyer for a watercolor class at the community center. I drove past that building twice a week for 18 months. Too old, I told myself. The other students would be retirees with decades of practice. My hands would shake. I'd embarrass myself. But age wasn't the barrier. Fear was. Fear of looking foolish after a lifetime of competence. What could I have focused on instead? The freedom that comes with having less to prove. At 70, no one was grading my brushstrokes. They were busy with their own canvases. I finally went at 71. My first painting was terrible, a muddy blue blob meant to be a sky. But the woman beside me said, "I like the clouds." And for the first time in years, I felt curious instead of judged. Age doesn't disqualify you from curiosity. It qualifies you for it. 6. Consuming endless information as if it were living. I spent 3 years watching cooking videos, French sauces, sourdough starters, hand-pulled noodles. I could describe the chemistry of gluten development, but had never kneaded dough with my own hands. My mind became a warehouse of other people's skills while my own kitchen stayed quiet. I confused knowing about life with living it. What could I have focused on instead? Depth over breadth. One real meal cooked with full attention instead of 10 recipes scrolled before bed. Information is not wisdom. Experience is. And experience requires presence, not consumption. At 79, I finally made bread. The dough stuck to my fingers. The loaf came out lopsided. But the smell of yeast filling my kitchen, that was mine. No video could give me that. 7, waiting to feel ready before I gave myself permission. This was the quietest thief of all. I waited to feel confident before speaking up in book club. Waited to feel inspired before writing a letter to my old friend. Waited to feel peaceful before taking a nap. I treated feelings as gatekeepers instead of guests passing through. And while I waited for the right emotion to arrive, years passed in a state of preparation. But readiness doesn't come before action. It comes after. You don't feel brave and then act. You act and then feel brave. What could I have focused on instead? Permission as a choice, not a feeling. I could have spoken while my voice shook, written the letter with uncertain phrasing, taken the nap while my mind still raced. Action doesn't require readiness, it builds it. The moment I stopped waiting to feel ready was the moment I started living again. I learned these things slowly, not through dramatic failures, through quiet accumulations of misdirected attention. I didn't lose my life in one grand mistake. I misplaced it in small, reasonable-seeming choices made day after day. And the recovery wasn't dramatic either. It was simply turning my attention toward what actually sustained me, space instead of stuff, imperfect action instead of perfect timing, silence instead of noise, the present instead of the past, curiosity instead of resignation, experience instead of consumption, choice instead of waiting. You might be making these same quiet trades right now, not because you're foolish, because no one warned you that the rules change halfway through. The strategies that built your first 50 years won't necessarily serve your next 30, and that's not a failure, it's an invitation. If any of this felt familiar, leave a word in the comments below. Just one word that resonated. I'll read them all. I spent too many years looking down at my hands, at my things, at my screen, at my past. I wish I had looked up sooner. The sky was always there. The light kept changing, and I almost missed it all while waiting to feel ready. What could you focus on instead? Start there, today. Not when conditions improve, not when you feel braver, not when you've earned it. You've already earned it. You're here. That's the only credential you need.